What's up, guys? I'm Zach Schreiber, and today I'm sitting here with Boomer Peterson with Pinnacle Commercial Group. He's been in real estate for about a decade now, but why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, Boomer Peterson, Pinnacle Commercial Group, like you said, broker over there. Started as a family brokerage, and we've grown with the intent and idea to kind of take care of our agents, and started when I was 23. I'm 32, so 9 years now, going on 10 years. So been doing it for a little bit, but yeah.
Yep, but you grew up in Lincoln, Nebraska. You went to Southeast,
Yep.
And you played football.
Yes.
Tell the folks about your football career and how you kind of got into it and then transitioned into D1 football, etc.
Yeah, so growing up, obviously, I was always the big kid, always had to play up in midget football. I think fifth grade, I was on A team, so anybody that, Lincoln Youth Football, I think it is now, but when we played, it was midget, of course, and, I played A team as a fifth grader. Nice. Actually, as a sixth grader. Let's take that back. And I think I can only remember one other person. Zach did that. Otherwise, everybody, they waited until you were seventh grade. So I loved football. Probably as a kid, getting my butt kicked by all the older kids probably helped me a ton. And finally hit my growth spurt in high school at Southeast. And I think when I started freshman year, I was 5'10" and about 205, and by the time I ended at Southeast, I was about 6'4", 6'5". And
so quite the growth spurt.
Yeah, hit the growth spurt, and then it was kind of like, okay, that dream of playing for, at that time it was the Huskers, but then they went through the whole throes of the coaching staff and everything, and kind of looked elsewhere and found Wake Forest, fell in love with it, and ended up out there. But that was kind of the start of, it sounds crazy, but the start of my real estate career. I can look back knowing that was kind of the start, some of the things that happened there that shaped and molded me to have the mentality that I take with me now on deals and whatnot for commercial sales.
Yeah, so you graduated from Wake Forest, but what drove you back home? Family?
Moved out to Denver, and the wife didn't love Denver. Great place to visit. It wasn't for us, and we moved back here, trying to move back to the Southeast, Atlanta area, the Carolinas. Job market was soft, and it was one of those where we had jobs here. She started down at Trader Joe's. I was working for Ritchie Brothers, and our mutual tie, of course, and so that was the first job back home. Working there, sitting in a basement, making calls.
So our audience knows we both worked at Ritchie Brothers, and we had a job called Lead Generation Group. And basically, we were shoved in the basement with 5-6 other guys. Me and you didn't work at the same time frame, but it seems like we had very similar experiences. Tell me how you felt about that job and kind of how it shaped your mentality about the corporate world and just kind of wanted to go off on your own.
Yep. Yeah, no. So, I remember sitting in the basement doing 45-hour weeks and whatnot. You would be sitting in a chair with a headset on, going through the database, making calls, and I've never been so. I think depression was creeping in just because you don't get out and about and you don't get to do stuff. And I just remember sitting in there after a while. I was working on my master's at the time as well, so that kind of took heat off. I would get to, I was gone for 2 weeks to go out to West Virginia for some classes and whatnot, and kind of broke up everything, but worked there for a year. Corporate, you get the great benefits, right?
Right.
You get great benefits. That's cool. But I remember after the first year seeing that, again, I don't even remember what you get, W-2, W-4. It's been 10 years since I've got one. It's all 1099, right? So
yep.
You're W-2. I got that W-2 and I looked at that, and all I could think of is, man, I put in a lot of work. And this is what I got. And, I always saw my parents going back to high school days. I'd run contracts because everybody needed wet signature. So I'd drop a contract off over at Lincolnshire office, or, across town over here at this brokerage, or wherever it was. So I would kind of always, oh, well, cool. My dad's selling this building, or my mom's selling this house. And I'd look at the stuff a little bit and, pass it off and go drop it wherever I needed to. But that was kind of the start of, hey, they get to they don't have they have an office, but they don't have an office. They're not just like, this is where I do all of my work right here. It's like, I'm always around town, buzzing around. So kind of reverted back to that. It's like, there's got to be a better way.
Right.
So
And I've had the experience or the luxury of sitting down with your dad and yourself, but you can just tell he's an experienced man and has a plethora of knowledge. How has he helped shape your career and guide you to be more successful?
Dad and I play off of each other very well. So obviously he showed me the ropes. I had to cut my teeth on, at the time, 10 years ago, an $80,000 house isn't like a flipper special like it is today. $80,000 house was, hey, this is nice and we can go live in it, turnkey, whatever. So I was selling like $80,000, $90,000, $100,000 houses just to get started. And Dad always said, you can mess one of those deals up and not have a huge repercussion and not mess it up. But, you can trip and stumble there as opposed to going into like a $2, $3, $4 million deal.
Right.
And, there's a lot more money at stake. There's a lot more riding on it, and you need to be, sharp to do those deals. And so just knowing that, seeing him do deals since I was a kid, that always fascinated me. Hey, Dad sold a $2 million building. I thought that was the coolest thing in the world. Like, look at this huge, distribution, 50,000 square foot warehouse, 100,000 square foot warehouse, whatever. And it was just cool to see all that kind of come together. But again, going back to it, I think Dad helped me see at that point when I was coming out of Ritchie Brothers, like, the market was really soft. This is 2010, 2011, at the end of 2010. And I just remember talking to him on the phone saying, I want to do real estate. And he's like, no, don't. So I took a job. I went over, I was Huddle's first D1 athlete to work for them, like number 31 or something like that, before they blew up. And again, it was still stuck in that, let's sit in a single spot. And so, but I kept going back to Dad and saying, hey, I want to do this. And, I think finally he gave up. He's like, fine, get your license. And so I got my license. And like I said, started with those small deals, but just built up that book of contacts and everything, and started working with people's parents, friends' parents, or different companies that I knew folks from, and started placing money for them. Got into the investment side, which is like my love, just making people money, and you do well for your clients, you bring more business, but. Right.
So you left Huddle.
Yeah.
And then you got into another brokerage. And how long was it before you guys broke off and started your own brokerage?
So I think 3 years, about 3.5 years after I started, I just kind of had this vision, again, going and not speaking ill, but there was more of a corporate tinge to it, just being owned by, who it's owned by and everything. There's just a lot more of a hierarchy, and there's things that you need to get past, and my vision of what I wanted my business to be was a little different. I didn't want to be hyper focused on Lincoln. I wanted to be able to, we're licensed throughout the state, so I've done deals from Scottsbluff to Omaha, up and down I-80, Kearney. We've probably done a deal either in these towns or somewhere near them, and it's just, hey, you should give that to a different agent out in Grand Island. I'm going, why? This is a cross-platform. It's the same thing, whether I sell it in Lincoln or in Grand Island, it's the same thing, national cap rates and stuff. So, really that kind of opened my eyes. I wanted a bigger picture instead of hyper-focus. And after about 3.5 years, got my broker's license, and I kind of gave Dad
that's awesome.
The heads up, yeah.
So what challenges were there when you guys started this new brokerage? Was there certain things that kind of popped up that you thought would be...
Oh, yeah. The stigma, and as I kind of opened up, family brokerage, it only started as a family brokerage because that's where we could, you can't really go out and tell everybody, hey, we're leaving, we're doing this, or whatever. But, it started out as just the core. Literally, in my family, heck, my grandpa is 92, I think. And Grandpa was licensed up until about 2-3 years ago. So at one point, there were 3 generations of Petersons practicing real estate. So my sister, my mom, my dad, my wife, we all have our licenses. So we were like the main core. But I think that stigma of it's just Peterson Realty. That's what it is. It's just Peterson Realty. It didn't bug me at all. But as far as like a recruiting an agent or anything, that was always the rebuttal. They just give the leads to family in there. I got my own business, and that was even when I started. I never wanted to be associated. I got away for years because I would never say anything about my parents to other agents, and then they would finally figure out that was my mom and dad. Bob and Sally were Boomer's mom and dad, and so right. I think that just breaking the stigma of that was a big hurdle. The other hurdle was, at that time, I call it like the schism of real estate in Lincoln. A lot of people were breaking off, branching out, doing different brokerages, starting their own brokerages. And, people didn't know if they might float, but who knows where they're going to land. Maybe they'll stay afloat. And, we're coming up on year 5 now. And so.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So as commercial agents, we have a great opportunity to be involved in some pretty cool deals, some major deals in our community. But what are some deals that you've worked that are kind of the highlight of your career, or something that rocks your socks, as you would say?
So and you give me flack for it. A lot of people give me flack for it.
Mr. Dollar General.
Mr. Dollar General, dude, they're safe havens. They are awesome. A lot of my clientele will take from, I started as a flipper in single family homes, foreclosures, or hey, I bought these 6-plexes, 4-plexes, and they've held them for long enough. They rode that rent appreciation. These investments aren't, they're not based on what that property is. It's income. It's a business. You're buying a business. And there's just been so much, the market's been flooded with money. So supply and demand, there's a huge demand for these properties, and so the cap rates go down and everything. But that made a lot of my people money. And so we safe haven these in these. Like, I love my triple nets. I love my national corporations, single tenant net lease. So the Dollar Generals, I did Freddy's Burgers and Fries up in Shadow Ridge up in Omaha. I've done the Dollar General out in, I think we've done 7. I've got, put That's 2 awesome. Under contract last night on the selling side. And then on the buying side, we've got 1 closing at the end of the month. And so it's kind of just a great safe haven. I love those to death. I catch flack for them, but they're so easy from the sense of understanding them. So I would say those would be, pretty high on the list. I also did last year, I did a company that, bought and they own their real estate, and we did the net lease kind of model to get them more money, raise funds just to keep the business going, and that had a gun company inside, 33,000 square foot building, tilt up concrete, and it was just a beautiful building. That was about 2.25 what we sold that at, and it was a fun deal. It was hard. Learned a lot. Started in April, didn't close until September. Buyer came in about May. Yeah. So tells you the timeline. I had weeks where I would be on the phone with lawyers and trying to hash things out with the LES, with the electric company, coming through on a line that ran underneath and had to reroute. So I would say those would be my net leases and the Dollar Generals, and then the gun company there. Those are kind of in my first 10 years the highlights.
So obviously, you're doing good for yourself. Sales seems to be climbing incrementally every year.
Yeah.
But it's all due to the relationships you've kind of built throughout the years.
Yep.
Kind of expand on that note where deals are more naturally coming to you because you've built solid foundations in those relationships.
Yeah.
Like, explain to me more about that.
I mean, it's the basic, people talk about referrals, and it's as simple as, I just tell people, new agents that start in, good business brings more business. I mean, if you're making your client money, there's a commission, there's a fee. You go to a good financial advisor and he makes you a portfolio that's $1 million portfolio over the years. You've paid him. He's made that for you. So at the end of the day, I think the biggest thing is just do good business. I mean, your handshake is only as good as your word. Your word is only as good as your handshake. And at the end of the day, if you're following up on that, it just grows organically. I mean, you can do the advertising, marketing. I'm kind of stealth. I mean, a lot of people, I would say that John Q. Public doesn't really. They probably are like, who's Boomer Peterson? The people transacting larger business in Lincoln, I'm on their radar. They know who I am. They know, hey, he's done XYZ apartment deals this year. And so I'll have the appraisers call me, or other investors will call me. And it's just, being the authority, being the knowledge source in whatever I feel like higher end investments. That's just my niche. That's the market I'm in. Yeah. And just continually bringing in, I got a new client. Then we make that client money. And just all these people, it just spreads by word. And so it's not the billboards. It's not the print media, the digital media that's doing my business mostly. It's word of mouth.
And I think we all get caught up in that in 2019, heading into 2020. Social media, internet platforms, data, tech. I think that's that's the trend. That's what everyone want to hop on. But when it comes to commercial real estate, it's all about the relationships you build. And that's why I wanted to bring it up, because it's especially in Lincoln, where we're so community focused. It's very valuable to have those experiences. But I've also noticed that you have taken in, you've started to dabble more into the social media. You're getting on LinkedIn. You're heavy on Twitter. You're doing drone work. How is that getting your brand and exposing your listings throughout the United States?
So just my drone guy, Derek Lee Dronography, so put his plug in there. But Derek, I think it was 4th grade, I started going to school with him, played midget football with him, all that stuff. And he started, he kind of moonlights, he does it on the weekends and nights, and then does marketing for a big construction company here in Lincoln. And so he FAA certified, all that good stuff. And I remember one day, I hooked him up with another photographer here in town, and ended up, that was a cool combo. So let's do it on houses, higher end houses. And I'm going, well, why don't we just use this on, the gun company was my first one. And I think, we watched that. You've seen that video, and it's very cool. Shows Innovation Campus, shows downtown, and then he flies down and into the floor of the factory. And, I started getting calls. I had Stan Johnson out of New York called me up, and they had a random guy who was placing money. He just thought it was cool because it had a gun company in it, and needed to cover 1031. And so they started calling. I had calls from Los Angeles. I had calls from Dallas, and just putting that up on my LoopNet and up on the national boards, people took note. And so that was the first venture into it. And so I've started doing that on my listings, and it started as the bigger listings, kind of the trophy listings, if you will.
Right.
But now, and we've discussed this, but it's kind of trickling down. It's like, you got to be consistent, right?
Be consistent.
Be consistent. So stealing your thunder there, but you got to be consistent with it. So then people realize, and I think that shows well for your seller. And again, growing business, they say, man, he's taking care of them, whether it's a sixplex over here and it's worth $300,000 or a $3 million deal. He's putting in the work, and he's taking care of these people and making sure they have full exposure.
Yeah, but it's also showing that you're constantly got deals going on. You're more involved, and it drives more traffic.
It does. And then going back to LinkedIn forever. I've been a LinkedIn pro, but just making the connections nationwide, whether it be bigger brokerages, and I'm kind of little brother. They come in, I'll help some of these bigger brokerages. I'll be their agent of record locally, and then I can go to them though, do a co-broke with them and use their database of buyers and blast out stuff nationwide. So it's kind of inverse and from what they do, or reverse of what they do, and it's just. That came from meeting people, just LinkedIn, or them seeing, again, posting different things, and then Twitter. Just they're the one I love. You have Big Boys Blast, and then you have the brokers list. And I love the brokers list because it's literally just a bunch of brokers nationwide. You can tag people on there. I've got a guy out of Gainesville, Florida, who was freshman year at Wake Forest. He was my next door neighbor, and now he's head of Colliers. He's the director of Colliers down in Gainesville. Just went over there. Dan Drodos. I found him when I started my Twitter account maybe a year and a half ago, 2 years, and at Broker Boomer LNK. So that's
there's the plug.
There's the plug. There's the plug for it. But just having that access, and then people seeing that there are deals. We're not a huge market. Lincoln's the biggest small town that I've ever been in, and people see that. There are $1 million deals in Nebraska. It's not just, cows and corn. So that's pretty cool. You get it blasted out there. And it kind of brings, credibility as well, because then they know it's not just talk when they see a tag on there in a list and, you're doing the work. So that's the other thing. Just a lot of smoke and mirrors. People tell you about all these deals they're doing, but they're not actually doing them, or they're not closing them, or
right.
So just adding legitimacy to your business via those tech points. LinkedIn, Twitter.
Well, I think it's also important to note. I mean, me and you both have had 1031 deals where we've had to help our clients kind of exchange money into another investment property. But what you notice when you get into this market, or actually everywhere, it's a lot of these deals are off market. So you have to network with other agents.
Yeah.
How do you feel about, what would you recommend to other commercial agents getting into the game and kind of trying to find these deals? Because that's kind of the hardest part for a lot of people. There's people with money, but they're trying to find these investment properties.
Yep. And so I've built up clientele in this portfolio that I can go back and tap and say, hey, Jim Smith, you own this sixplex, and I've got a guy that wants to buy it. We can figure out a deal here, and if the number works for you and him and all is well, then we take you and we 1031. So a lot of the people I work with, I might bring in the buyer, bring in the seller together, and then take their money out and do a 1031 into a different and upgrade that person. Another hashtag I use is let me upgrade you, Beyonce or something, right? So that's the new one I started tagging on everything, because a lot of my people are upgrading into these triple nets. So you're going from a 1970s or 80s apartment unit to maybe built in the past 10 years or even brand new on some of these Dollar Generals and whatnot, and just kind of upgrading from asset wise.
Yeah, I mean we've talked about this before, and in my personal opinion, I think we kind of need to change the narrative for our community downtown. Obviously, in the paper, there's been some announcement of some vacancies in downtown, both in the Haymarket and the Rail Yard. Like I mentioned to you, it seems like we have the Silicon Prairie, we have entrepreneurs, we have a younger professional crowd that wants to live downtown, but maybe there's not condos, or the downtown living situation is not very good. How do you think we as commercial agents can kind of change the narrative and promote more of a young professional downtown living and growing it and just changing the narrative versus just being a college football town?
Sure. Well, and the hard part is you have large companies that have bought up a lot of the space down there, buildings and whatnot. And some of those, I'll have clients come and say, well, I want to lease this out, but I want it for $12 a foot, not $14 a foot. And I want this. They don't understand that sometimes people are that big that they can take that hit and just leave these spaces open for years sometimes. And they're just waiting for the right tenant to come along and the right lease that they can sign. But that's the hard part. Obviously, land. There's only so much land, and that land is just packed down there. And so really, I think it's just getting in there. If you have people, you see a lot of teaming up now. It used to be everybody kind of worked on their own. Now you're getting these mega deals where 3-4 different groups of big investors in Lincoln are putting their money, pooling it together, and they're going to do a 15, 20 story building. Or you have these nationals. I think the nationals really bring, I'm thinking like the Journal Star or the parking lot, why can't I think of it, across from the Lead Center there. They're doing these. I think that spices up the conservativeness sometimes of the average Joe in Lincoln that says, we went through the Haymarket stuff, right? And all of the older folks, not all, a lot of the older folks were, well, that's going to cause more taxes and this and that. That's the best thing. We get big acts coming through there. I went to Jay-Z in Lincoln, Nebraska, for gosh sakes, right? And, you're getting every country act in the world wants to come through here multiple times. Eric Church has been here 2-3 times. And that wasn't happening at Pershing. Pershing served its purpose, but that, the Pinnacle Bank Arena, I think, took us. That was our foothold into, the next level, tipping point into a bigger city. And I really think that, even though it's downtown focused, I think that helped build the burbs, kind of, South Lincoln and North Lincoln and all these places we're building. I think that just brought appeal to bring the younger folks back,
Right. So the holidays are coming up. You've talked to me about this before, but you seem to have a good life-work balance.
Yeah.
And you love to hunt. So kind of talk about how you set your goals for the next year and what you try and achieve so you have the time to spend it with your family and do the things that you love.
Yeah. So I've never been a firm believer in goals. My goal is always to best myself, to be better than what you were last year. So I've never been a written goal type person. I'm not going to say, I want to sell 15 mil next year. I'm like, no, I want to do better than I did, this year, or this year I was down. I want to get back to.
I like that.
Yeah. So it's always besting, always growing, not being complacent and just being happy where you're at, but growing your business. And so, going back to it, real estate has afforded me a lifestyle where, we're going to be gone for a week or so, go out and visit my wife's family, Indianapolis up to Cleveland and back around. And sometimes we just take trips to get out, and, it's a beautiful thing. But then you have people that can cover for you too. And, you cover for them when you're gone. And, end of the day too, like you said, hunting. So September 1, deer season starts with the bow, and, my wife hates it, but I'm out there sometimes 2-3 times a week and sitting in the tree. That's my happy time, decompress and chill out and watch nature. And my kids think I'm the worst deer hunter in the world.
Having sold heavy equipment before, it was like you're either a hunter, a golfer, or a fisher.
Some sort of vice, right?
In all those activities, you're spending a long time with that customer. So personally, I love golf. And so that's 4 hours I get to spend with my customer. And hunting, obviously, is the same situation where you get a.
Well, and it depends what you're hunting. If you're like deer hunting, though, you're like, hey, go to this stand. There's a big buck that walks by. I'll let you take that one. And but you're still away. There's not that, it's almost like a gift, like bringing a gift to them. But then you go goose hunting or duck hunting and you're in the blind.
But that bonding and relationship building is.
Oh, it's key. Yeah. It's key. Take clients out on goose hunt or duck hunt, and you have a good time, and it's just like you said, a building. I look at more. I kind of judge my clientele by, hey, would I have a beer with this person, or could I go hunt with this person? Could I do something outside, non-business related with this person? How does that relationship work? So that's kind of how I judge the folks that I'm working with, and end of the day, if you can take them out and go hunting, or you can go golf. I mean, I'm not the best golfer, but it's a good time. Chase the white ball. So, so you get into those, and it's amazing though that you can mix business and pleasure just like that, instead of sitting in a basement or sitting at a desk all day. Just goes back to that entrepreneurial spirit. And just, being out there. Yeah. So,
well, Boomer, thanks for coming on to my show.
Absolutely.
Tell the people where they can find you, what social media platforms you're on, and how to connect with you.
Yep. So, given name's Tyler, but everything's Boomer. So don't look up Tyler Peterson. Boomer Peterson, LinkedIn, at Broker Boomer LNK on Twitter. I have the Facebook page too. Finally just started that up. My wife set me up on that. So I think that's just Boomer Peterson, Pinnacle Commercial Group. And feel free to reach out for anything, whether it be Lincoln or elsewhere in the state. Would be more than happy to help.
All right, guys, thanks for listening. Be sure to find me on Zach Schreiber Realtor page via Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. Plenty more great content on those platforms.